Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. Today is finally here where I actually after a long time decided to do some thermal paste war in terms of checking out how they perform and grabbing each and every one that I could, except I think Yhello from one of those mainstream brands that is cheaper and affordable, and having a bunch of them right here. I think we have 11. I think 12 is liquid metal from Thermal Grizzly, but regardless of that, we have quite a bunch here, and this is the Benchtable. So I'm not going to touch my table here because they aren't stable here on the table. They're more stable here on the bench. So regardless of the jokes and rhymes and everything else, it was quite interesting to check out everything and all the thermal pastes and liquid metal and the cryo sheet as well, just to see how they perform. And apart from other reviews that I've seen that used Intel processors, I actually went with what I usually do in my benchmarks. I used AMD processor, and even though they go to the most possible highest temperature they could at that point of benchmarking, there is actually a difference where you could actually notice how they perform each of these. And this is where we go into Cinebench to check out the scores, where we could go with clock speeds and where we could actually in Cinebench see how many passes it actually has concerning when we take into consideration the benchmark scores. So there are some instances where you could actually notice the difference in these thermal pastes. Now, this alignment right here doesn't have to do anything with the final scores. This is just, well, basically how I actually went and test them out. So that's it. Now, before I go more into details about each of the thermal paste, and I promise it won't be that long, I'll try to wrap it up because we have loads of data. The Benchtable right here. So we have the InWin MR36. I actually wanted to go with Enermax LickMax Flow 360, but unfortunately I couldn't find the locking mechanism. So yeah, there's a coincidence in that scenario where I had to ditch that AIO, unfortunately. So I went with InWin MR36, AMD Ryzen 9 7900 X3D on the MSI MPG B650 Carbon Wi-Fi. I have a graphic card here that is just for video and nothing else. I did get some thermals, but it's totally irrelevant and will be used for another video. And for the RAMs, Kingston Fury Renegade RGB DDR5 2x16 at 6400 MHz. So this is everything that you need to know. The best way I could go is with the Streetcom BC1V2 Benchtable, which is kind of handy because after all, yeah, it doesn't matter with the video. So let's start. We have here Noctua NT-H2, then we have the Arctic MX6, Thermal Grizzly Crynout Extreme, Arctic MX4, and I wanted to use MX5 as well, even though it's end of life. I had a bit of a paste, but I don't think it would be enough to run benchmarks just for comparison, nothing else, because you can't buy it anymore. But regardless of that, unfortunately, I didn't have enough, so I ditched that one. Then we go with Noctua NT-H1. We have the Thermal Grizzly Cryo Sheet. Then we have Thermal Grizzly Conductanaut Extreme Liquid Metal. This right here, the smaller one, is Cooler Master's Master Gel Pro, NZXT High Performance Thermal Paste, Deepcool DM9, Fantex ph-ndc, and InWin, it doesn't have any name, but it kind of resembles to the Cooler Master one when we're talking about the packaging, let's put it this way, and some Thermal Grizzly as well. So I'm kind of torn if it actually is somewhere in the middle of those, but the benchmarks will show everything. So let's start what I did. I ran AIDA64 Extreme Edition, all boxes ticked for 30 minutes on each of these, and Cinebench R23 throttling test for 10 minutes. And it was quite a long time actually to bench all of these out, and quite interesting at the same time, I do have to admit. Since various brands actually publish different specifications, let's put it this way, from each thermal paste and all the other compounds that you could put on your processor to cool it down or to have thermal conductivity, I used only data from their official websites. I didn't want to go and research the poise or viscosity or thermal conductivity because that was debunked, and I don't want to go into that segments. I'm here just to present you pure thermals, frequencies, and eventually scores from Cinebench. That's it. But before we go into benchmarks and I show you the results, I really want to go through each and just give you information about each of those, and we were talking about specs. So we have NTH1 from Noctua, weight is 3.5 grams, volume is 1.4 milliliters, density is 2.49 grams per cubic meter. We have grayish color, and the recommended storage time before use is up to 3 years. Recommended usage time on the CPU is up to 5 years. Recommended storage temperature is regular room temperature, and operating temperature is from -50 to 110. Thermal Grizzly Cryo Sheet, thickness 0.2 millimeters, temperature range from -250 to 150 Celsius, color is anthracite. Cooler Master Master Gel Pro, color gray, volume is 1.5 milliliters, and density is 2.6 grams per cubic meter. Then we have NZXT High Performance Thermal Paste, weight is 3 grams, volume or specific gravity, as some of them, it all depends on the brand, what they specify. So one has volume, one has specific gravity. So for the NZXT it's 3.5 grams per cubic centimeter. It isn't electrically conductive like most thermal paste. And here we have viscosity, but honestly I don't have data when we're talking about viscosity for others, so I'm not going to mention those whatsoever. Deepcool DM9, volume is 3.5 grams per cubic centimeter, operating temperature from -50 to 250 degrees, color is gray, and weight 1.5 grams. Fantex ph-ndc, volume 2.55 grams per cubic centimeter, operating temperature is from -40 to +150 Celsius. Thermal Grizzly Conductanout Extreme Liquid Metal, operating temperature from -50 to +200, volume is 6.29 grams per cubic centimeter, and we have silver color, quite obvious. In thermal paste, there is actually no information about this because they deliver this with their coolers, so there isn't a possibility to buy it separately. I'll just mention this quite shortly. This is cool for you guys that actually buy InWin products and you're curious if you should use the thermal paste that you get with the cooler, or you're going to go with some of the top 3, top 5 that are on the ranks in global or whatever others, other reviewers tested or something like that. So some of them aren't, well, basically I think only, yeah, you can buy the ph-ndc, I think, not quite sure, from Fantex. You definitely can buy InWin. Cooler Master you can buy, and NZXT you can buy. Everything else is available throughout all stores. So basically just for the InWin, I included it. I could use Valkyrie and others, but really time was on the essence, and I wanted to use some more mainstream ones, let's put it this way. Then we have Noctua NTH2, weight is 3.5 grams, volume is 1.2 milliliters, density is 2.81 grams per cubic centimeter. We have grayish color. Recommended storage time before use is up to 3 years, and on the CPU is up to 5 years. Recommended storage temperature is regular room temperature, and operating temperature is from -50 to 200 degrees. Arctic MX6, weight is 4 grams, volume 2.60 grams per cubic centimeter. Operating temperatures from -50 to 150. Viscosity, here we have it, but as I stated, some say 45,000 poise, the others have it a bit differently, so whatever, not electrically conductive. Arctic MX4 weight for the one that I use is 4 grams, volume is 2.5 grams per cubic centimeter. Volume resistivity, now this is something that I haven't found on others except for on Arctic, and viscosity as well, which as I stated I can't find for each of those, so there's nothing to compare here. Honestly, if I don't have all the data for all the thermal pastes, I honestly don't want to include them. And then finally we have the Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut Extreme. This is the first time we have from all of these color pink. Operating temperature from -250 to 350, this is interesting. Volume 3.76 gram per cubic centimeter, and that's it. That's all there is to it when we're talking about the specs. Now, as you already seen, or you're going to see some parts in the future part of the video, it's time to turn it on. Okay, so let's check it out. As already stated, AIDA64 Extreme Edition, all boxes ticked, MR36 cooling, AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D, on the motherboard, which is MSI MPG B650 Carbon Wi-Fi with Kingston Fury Renegade RGB DDR5 2x16 at 6400 MHz. The processor was ran on stock, because I know not all of you guys know how to undervolt, overclock or stuff like that, so I didn't want to go into those segments. And as you know from all of my other reviews, I do everything on stock just because I want to have simplicity when we're talking about presenting you stuff. So here we go. AIDA64 Extreme Edition. The last place is NZXT High Performance Thermal Pastes with 93 degrees and 4700 MHz clock speed. Then right after that we have a Thermal Grizzly Cryo Sheet, which actually this is a small margin of, let's say, difference when we have 92 degrees but 4725 MHz clock speed. But the same clock speed goes to the next three, so Fantex ph-ndc, Mastergel Pro and InWin No Name. But the thermals are a bit different. So we have Fantex at 91 as well as Mastergel Pro, same clock speed. And then we have InWin at 90 degrees, same clock speed. Next to that, we go with Arctic MX4, that's the 6th position. Arctic MX4 with 90 degrees Celsius and 4750 MHz clock speed. Deepcool DM9 89 degrees, which is quite a positive surprise, I do have to say, but I'll get to the point later on. 4750 MHz. And Arctic MX6 89 at 4775 MHz. And then we have the top three, Noctua NT-H1 with 89 degrees Celsius and 4800 MHz, and Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut Extreme 89 at 4800 MHz. The first place goes to Noctua NT-H2 with 88 degrees Celsius and 4800 MHz. What I can conclude, and what you actually get in my reviews when we're talking about coolers, is that first of all, the DM9, why did it surprise me and why it did not? They aren't a producer, regular producer like for thermal paste like Noctua does, Arctic or Thermal Grizzly, right? So they actually did quite an outstanding job with this one, because after all we do see a great performance with their coolers. It is about the cooler mostly, but thermal paste does the conductivity and everything else. So this is quite outstanding to have it so high, and it's not that large of a difference when we take into consideration the first 5-6 thermal pastes, and yeah, quite interesting. Now when we take into consideration the first three, it's such small difference, and this is all on average. And I didn't mention here, of course, the liquid metal, because it's quite logical what it will achieve. We're talking here about 86 degrees on the CPU and clock speed at 4825 MHz. So yeah, quite interesting when we're talking about that. I wasn't surprised with the NT-H2, the Thermal Grizzly, because I did use them prior to some other, let's put it this way, other benchmarks when we're talking about coolers. So yeah, there's that. The NZXT, I don't know what to say, it's there at the last place. It's not huge of a difference, but still I would rather switch the NZXT thermal paste, my personal opinion, and go with any of the top 5-6 eventually, and just get more performance from their coolers, right? Now for the Cinebench R23 benchmark, let's check that out as well. Of course, I'll just mention the Thermal Grizzly Conductanaut Extreme. So CPU went up to 81 degrees, clock speed was 5025 MHz, score was 27,012, and it had 22 passes in those 10 minutes. Talking about the actual table and how they ranked, Thermal Grizzly Cryo Sheet at 11th place, which is a bit of a surprise because I did read loads of positive feedback on it, but I don't know if I made a mistake. But as you can see in AIDA64, it was somewhere there, but it was quite close to the 8th position without a doubt, especially with the clock speed. But right here we have 89 degrees Celsius, 4925 MHz, 25,898 score, and 20 passes. This 20 pass, it was just at the beginning, so it kind of does make a difference. Then we go with the NZXT High Performance, which is on 10th place, 87 degrees, 4925 MHz, 26,069 Cinebench points, and the same thing for the passes, 20 at the beginning. It started right before the end of 10 minutes. Next in line we have the InWin, which has still no name, 85 degrees Celsius, 4950 MHz, 26,246 Cinebench points and 20 passes. This was somewhere regular. If it went above half of the pass, I just consider it as a full one, and that's it. Fantex ph-ndc, 85 degrees, 4950 MHz, 26,263 with 20 passes. So these three, Cooler Master Gel Pro, ph-ndc and InWin, are really close in just like a couple of Cinebench points, which is totally irrelevant. Master Gel Pro 26,269, ph-ndc 26,263 and InWin 26,246. All three 85 degrees, 4950 MHz. Then we go with the RTX MX 4 at 6th position with 84 degrees, which is kind of nice to have an upgrade. 4950 MHz, and we have a bit of a jump here with Cinebench points at 26,406, 20 passes. Noctua NTH1, and this was a bit of a surprise because I really did expect it to keep that third position, but in this scenario it didn't. 84 degrees, 4975 MHz, 26,464 with 20 passes. And then we have the shocker of them all, Deepcool DM6, 84 degrees, 4975 MHz, 26,632, which is quite a lot when we compare the differences towards others compared to NTH1. And 21 passes, it actually even entered 21 pass, and third place goes to Arctic MX6, so 83 degrees Celsius, 4975 MHz clock speed. So the same as DM6, but we get quite a boost when we're talking about Cinebench points, 26,867 with 21 pass. And here we have a bit of a, I don't know how to explain this. We get higher clock speed, but a bit lower Cinebench points. And if you notice those 10 consecutive runs that I do usually for coolers and everything else, you can see that it kind of goes up and down eventually. I would say that somewhat an average is 50 to 100 Cinebench points in those 10 benchmarks. So what I gave Thermal Grizzly Crynout Extreme the second place because it has 83 degrees and 5000 MHz clock speed. This can eventually prove to be and score better Cinebench points. 26,845 when you take into consideration that it isn't that much, it's only 22 Cinebench points. I think that's quite alright, and 21 pass. And now for the winner of this benchmark, Noctua NTH2, 82 degrees, 5000 MHz, 26,894 and 21 passes in the Cinebench R23. The conclusion towards all of this is that the top three are quite close, always, constantly. So they have slight margin where you can see the difference when we're talking about Cinebench points, when we see the clock speed. Eventually they are usually the same or with 25 MHz difference. And the thermals are either 1 degrees, not much, not drastical. Then we have the second segment where it's from the 4th to 6th, eventually maybe touching 7th position, where we also have a quite close fight and the same margin when we're talking about difference, clock speeds, thermals, Cinebench points, and eventually passes. And finally, then we go to the last segment where we have from 7th to, I would say, 8th to 11th position, where we have some similarities as well. So this is, I would place them in those three segments and giving you some, I don't know, ideas. But of course, there's loads of stuff here to discuss. I'm quite surprised that CryoSheet didn't perform much better, at least in my benchmarks. So for this, I'm not quite sure. This is the first time that I'm actually using the CryoSheet and liquid metal, unfortunately. But I didn't have the opportunity to actually have the chance to do any benchmarks prior to this regarding these two. Thermal paste is kind of regular for any kind of benchmark, so yeah. The reason that I didn't use any other thermal paste is basically, I didn't order them, and I didn't even thought, because I had like 11 already, and I thought this would be quite enough, let's say, information and thermal paste for you guys to consider. I do regret not grabbing more varieties of thermal paste, because they are like a Galid or I don't know, something else. It's totally unnecessary to mention now at the end of the video. But regardless of that, Noctua does perform quite outstanding, and it's right next to the Cryonaut Extreme. So depending on the price and depending on the availability, Noctua NT-H2 or Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut Extreme, without a doubt. And eventually what I would suggest is, well, it kind of is an accident that I place them and test them like this, but regardless of that, Arctic MX6. So these three, if you've seen in the past videos, if it isn't a specific cooler like from Antec or any other brand that has their own some sort of a specific thermal paste that I have to use specifically for that review to show the performance with that thermal paste and that cooler, I used one of these three. Mostly I was using Noctua and Arctic, but yeah, quite impressed with these three, and these are top recommendations regardless of the price. We're talking here pure performance, pure benchmarks and everything else. When we're talking about the price, these two are a bit expensive, I do have to admit, when we're talking about and comparing them to the Arctic MX6. But it's all up to you to decide which one will be the most suitable for you regarding these benchmarks, regarding the price and everything else. Guys, I mean, this was all in one go when we're talking about the video. You might see some cuts because I did make some mistakes when talking. But regardless of that, hope it gave you some information when we're talking about benchmarks. I know there are loads of thermal paste wars online, and you can check them out on Reddit, loads of forums, YouTube videos, and regardless of YouTube videos, you can always go and check my friend Level Up Gaming and Tech. He actually did a bit smaller comparison when we're talking about thermal paste, but he did them on Intel processor, so it might give you some differences and insights about that as well. So yeah, I'll put the link in the description below so you can check out that video as well. But regardless of that, these are top three and definitely a recommendation depending on your budget, and if you're running a low profile cooler or anything in terms of like, not low profile but low tier cooler, this won't make that much of a difference. But if you're running something higher and you're skeptic about the thermal paste that is coming with the cooler, grab one of these three and you'll be definitely satisfied. And that'll be all for today. I'll place the links in the description for top three, and that's all. That's it, guys. Hope you liked it. If it helped you decide, or if you have some opinions on anything, you can always leave a comment. You can always subscribe, hit the like button, click the notification bell, and hopefully I'll see you in another one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.